What happens when a powerful CEO hires a street violinist to fake love, only to discover she's the one thing his world was missing? Graham had everything but peace. Maya had nothing but soul. One night of pretending turns into a journey of raw music, shattered pride, and a love that defies every rule. But when secrets surface and hearts break, will truth be enough to bring them back together? You won't want to miss how this story ends. Where are you watching from? Drop your city below, and don't forget to subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories for more tales that move the heart. Graham Ellis stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of his high-rise corner office, the city lights flickering below like restless stars. Behind him, the hum of his assistants typing and the faint clink of whiskey in a glass were the only sounds in the room. It had been a long day of board meetings and broker calls, but none of it lingered on his mind. Instead, his phone buzzed on the desk with a name he hadn't seen in 2 years. Vivian Cross. He stared at the screen, his jaw tight. For a second, he considered letting it ring out. But curiosity, or maybe something closer to unfinished business, won. He picked up. "Graham," came her voice, smooth and syrupy. "Still saving the world one tower at a time?" "What do you want, Vivian?" he asked, flatly. "Oh, don't sound so thrilled," she laughed. "I thought you'd want to know. I'm getting married. Carter Langston. You remember him, don't you? Of course you're invited. Engagement party's this Saturday." He didn't respond. She continued, voice dripping with faux sweetness. "It's been, 2 years since we broke up? Still haven't managed to find anyone who'll put up with your charming moods? Or are you still dating your work and sleeping next to blueprints?" Graham exhaled through his nose. "Not your business." "Oh, but it is," she purred. "I told everyone you'd come alone." Classic Graham. Stoic, brilliant, utterly incapable of sustaining a relationship longer than a wine tasting. There was a pause. "Unless you shock us all and bring someone. Though, let's be honest, no one really expects that." "I'll be there," he said simply, "with someone." There was a beat of silence on her end, then a cool chuckle. "Well, I love surprises." When the call ended, Graham stood there for a long time, the phone still in his hand. He hated the way she could still needle him, twist a sentence into a blade. But more than that, he hated how part of him still wanted to win. Not for her, for himself. The next morning, he woke early and left his building without his driver, walking through the city as the sun filtered between glass towers. The cold bit at his neck, but he welcomed it. He needed clarity. Or distraction. In the distance, he heard the low, haunting sound of a violin threading its way through the streets. Not the typical subway fiddle or showy classical piece. This was different. Raw. A melody that felt like a bruise slowly blooming. He followed the sound to a small plaza near the park where a woman stood, her bow dancing across the strings like her life depended on it. She wore a worn leather jacket and boots scuffed from the pavement. Her dark curls were pulled messily beneath a knit hat. A small, dented violin case lay open before her, a handful of wrinkled bills inside. But her music was bold, defiant, like it belonged in a concert hall, not a sidewalk corner. Graham waited until the last note echoed into silence. She looked up, cautious, wary. "You play like you're telling a secret," he said. She narrowed her eyes. "You always open conversations with metaphors?" He offered a tight smile. "Graham." "Maya," she replied, still on guard. "And unless you're about to offer to buy the violin, I'm not looking for conversation. I'm looking for a date." She blinked. "Excuse me?" He explained, not everything, just enough. The gala, the ex, the need for someone unexpected. Her expression shifted from amusement to suspicion. "You want me to play pretend in a ballroom? Do I look like I own heels?" "No," he said quietly. "That's the point." When he mentioned she'd be compensated, her lips curled slightly. But it wasn't until he glanced at her phone and saw the caller ID, Sierra Hospital, missed call, that the shift happened. "I'll cover it," he said softly. "Whatever the bill is." She looked at him, startled. "You don't even know me." "No," he agreed. "But I heard something in your music, something real, and I need real more than perfect." Maya stared at him for a long moment, eyes sharp as glass. Then she said, "You better not be a serial killer." He smiled. "Only on weekends." And just like that, the game began. Maya stood stiffly on a low marble platform in the center of the boutique, surrounded by gowns that shimmered like secrets. She fidgeted with the frayed strap of her bag while the stylist whirled around her like a storm of silks and pins. The boutique smelled like roses and champagne, and she felt wildly out of place, like a stray cat invited to a swan gala. Graham sat nearby in a tailored gray coat, scrolling through his phone in silence, but every now and then she caught him glancing up. She had tried on 5 dresses already. Each one felt more foreign than the last. Tight bodices, plunging necklines, sequins that scratched her arms. "Too shiny," she muttered after one. "I look like a disco ball with a grudge." The stylist laughed politely. Graham didn't say anything, but when she stepped out in the 6th dress, a midnight navy piece with soft lines and subtle elegance, he stood. "That one," he said quietly, not looking at the dress but at her. "It doesn't try too hard. It lets you show up." Maya turned toward the mirror. For the first time, she didn't flinch. The dress wasn't flashy, it just fit. She ran her fingers over the fabric, then reached into her bag and pulled out a tarnished bronze locket on a thin chain. "I'm wearing this," she said. Graham stepped closer. "It's yours. You should." "Was my mom's," she said, voice softer. "It's cracked, but still holds." He nodded. "Then it's perfect." They left the boutique just as the city lights blinked on like fireflies across steel towers. Graham checked his watch. "No time for a restaurant," he said, "but I could cook my place." "You cook?" Maya raised a skeptical brow. "Let me guess, microwave truffle risotto?" "I do okay," he replied with a hint of a smile. His apartment was everything she expected, sleek, modern, all glass, and minimalism. The kitchen looked like it had never seen a drop of sauce. She leaned against the counter, eyeing the spotless marble. "Do people actually live here?" Graham rolled up his sleeves, revealing forearms marked with small faded scars. "Used to cook for my mom every night when she was sick, haven't stopped." Maya opened a drawer, her eyes widened. "You alphabetized your spices?" "Efficiency," he said, setting a pan on the stove. "You're one banana peel away from being a psychopath." He smirked. "You're not the first to say that." As he chopped onions with the kind of precision that made her nervous, Maya attempted to help. Her knife slipped, onion slices flew. She yelped and nearly dropped the blade. "Okay, I'm officially useless." Graham stepped in, gently repositioning her hands, thumb behind the fingers. "Like this." She followed his movements. The moment was brief, but something shifted, some tension eased between them, replaced by an odd comfort. When the sauce began to bubble and the pasta boiled, Maya knocked over the salt jar. Granules scattered across the counter like confetti. She groaned. "You should revoke my kitchen privileges." Graham shrugged. "It's just texture." They ate at a small wooden table near the window, the city blinking behind them like a watching audience. He poured her water. "Tomorrow night," he said, "Vivian will ask what you do." "I'll say I play violin," she said. "Street corners, weddings, the occasional therapy session in Central Park." "Say you play to live," he murmured, not to impress. She tilted her head. "You're good with words? That come with the CEO package?" "I prefer clarity," he said simply. They ate in companionable silence until she raised her glass. "A toast. To strangers." He lifted his. "To accidents that feel intentional." She smiled, warmth blooming in her chest. "To one night," she added softly. But as their glasses clinked, neither of them truly believed that anymore. The air at the Langston estate shimmered with quiet luxury. Crystal chandeliers hung like constellations above a ballroom drenched in gold and champagne. Graham adjusted his cufflinks as he stepped through the double doors. Every movement deliberate, calm. But when Maya emerged beside him, even he had to pause. She wore the midnight navy gown as if it had been spun from dusk and resilience. Her hair was swept back in a soft twist, a few strands curling around her cheek. The tarnished locket rested at her collarbone, catching the light like a secret she refused to hide. The room didn't just notice her, it stopped. Eyes followed their path as they crossed the marble floor. Conversations dulled to murmurs. Even the string quartet faltered slightly, as if unsure whether to continue playing or watch the unfolding scene. Maya leaned toward Graham, lips barely moving. "Are we on a red carpet or in a lion's den?" "Both," he muttered. Near the center of the room stood Vivian, wrapped in scarlet silk and surrounded by the usual chorus of power suits and surgically perfected smiles. Her gaze locked onto Graham first, sharp, predatory, then drifted to Maya. For a flicker of a second her expression cracked. Just a flicker. "Graham," she greeted, syrupy as ever. "And you must be interesting." Maya smiled politely. "Maya." Vivian's smile sharpened. "Tell me, Maya, did you two meet in a boardroom, or did Graham pick you up while saving the world one foundation at a time?" Maya's voice didn't waver. "Actually, we met through music. The kind that stops you mid-stride, not the kind with spreadsheets." Vivian blinked. The man beside her chuckled under his breath. Graham's jaw flexed, but Maya touched his arm lightly. Her silent message? "I've got this." "I play violin," Maya continued, calm and confident. "Sometimes outside subway stations, the acoustics are surprisingly good." Vivian tilted her head. "How quaint." "If by quaint you mean unforgettable," Maya replied with a soft smile, "then sure." Graham fought the grin tugging at his mouth as Vivian blinked again, momentarily disarmed. Before the woman could respond, he gently guided Maya away toward the quieter edges of the ballroom. "Remind me never to underestimate you," he murmured. "You shouldn't have in the first place," she quipped. They wandered toward a tall window overlooking the city. Maya's eyes were drawn to a couple seated nearby, an elderly man and woman, fingers intertwined, their laughter soft and private. Something about the way they leaned into each other, like the years had only deepened their closeness, made her heart ache a little. She approached with quiet steps. "Happy anniversary," she said after catching a snippet of their conversation. The woman beamed. 54 years today." Maya smiled and knelt beside their table, pulling a folded notepad and pencil from her clutch. With swift, fluid strokes, she began to sketch. Graham watched from a distance, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. In just a few minutes, she handed over the sketch. Two faces drawn in light, graceful lines, tucked beneath a little arch of stars. The woman gasped, pressing a hand to her lips. Her husband blinked hard, fighting tears. Maya gave them a gentle nod, then stood and walked back. Graham stood up and pulled out her chair before she could say anything. She sat, glancing at him with something softer in her eyes. Before she could speak, a voice rang out behind them, cutting through the ambient hum of violins and wine glasses. "Maya, was it?" Vivian again, voice honeyed and cruel. "Would you sing something for us? I mean, since you perform in public, surely you're not shy." Thomas stiffened. Maya's eyes didn't waver. "Of course." The room grew still as she crossed the floor. A waiter handed her a mic. She turned to the pianist. "Do you know Moon River?" she asked. He nodded. As the first notes rose, Maya closed her eyes and began to sing. Her voice was gentle but rich, as if every word had been soaked in honesty. The room held its breath. No one moved. Even Vivian stood frozen. Graham watched, unmoving, as the woman beside him was no longer pretending. She was just her. And for the first time in years, so was he. The city looked different in the hours after the gala, quieter, more honest. Rain had begun to fall in a soft mist, catching in the glow of the street lamps as Graham and Maya walked side by side, their footsteps echoing down the empty sidewalk. He held his blazer above her head like a makeshift umbrella, his shirt already damp at the shoulders. She didn't protest. For once, silence between them wasn't something that needed filling. "Well?" Maya said, peering up at the sky. "That was unexpected." "You mean your show-stealing performance or Vivian's face after?" Graham replied, his voice warm with amusement. "Both," she grinned, then turned more serious. "You okay? You were quiet after." "I was listening," he said simply, "to the way you silenced a room without raising your voice." Maya's eyes flicked toward him, searching. But before she could speak, a gust of wind caught her dress and made her laugh. Graham smiled and reached out to steady her by the elbow. By the time they reached her building, the rain had picked up. She stood at the base of the steps, not moving to go inside just yet. "This was supposed to be pretend," she said softly. "I know," Graham replied, not quite meeting her gaze. "But it didn't feel like it," she added. He looked up. "Not to me either." The moment held, waited tender, until Maya shook her head and broke into a breathy laugh. "This whole thing is insane." "It is," Graham agreed, "but for one night, it worked." "For one night," she echoed, then turned and disappeared up the stairs. The next morning, Graham arrived at the office early, dressed in navy and unreadable. He pored over reports he couldn't absorb, barely hearing his assistant's reminders. His thoughts drifted to Maya's voice, her sketch for the elderly couple, her fingertips brushing the microphone like it was something sacred. He didn't notice his brother standing in the doorway until Carter cleared his throat. We need to talk, Carter said, stepping inside and closing the door. About her. Graham looked up, slow and guarded. Her name is Maya. Carter folded his arms. She's not right for you. Excuse me? You know she's not your world, Graham. You've spent your entire life building this reputation, this company, and now you're risking all of it for someone who plays violin for spare change and draws strangers on cocktail napkins. She's not a risk, Graham said tightly. She's the only thing in my life that makes sense. Carter leaned forward. This is real estate, not a romantic comedy. Perception matters. Investors talk, clients talk. Graham's voice dropped. Maybe I'm tired of chasing expectations that don't feel like mine. She'll be crushed in our world, Carter said. And you know that. Neither of them noticed that the door had been left slightly ajar. And just outside, holding a brown paper bag with 2 containers of soup and a sleeve of fresh bread, stood Maya. She had come to surprise him, maybe talk, maybe laugh, after all the tension of the night before. But what she heard stopped her cold. She doesn't belong. The words sank into her like cold iron. Her fingers trembled. The bag slipped from her hands, landing softly on the carpeted floor. No one heard. She turned without a sound and left the building, disappearing into the rain like she had never been there. Inside, Graham returned to his desk, unaware of what had slipped through his fingers. That night, he called her, straight to voicemail. He texted. Nothing. He went to the bar. The owner shrugged. Haven't seen her. Days passed. He tried the bookstore, the park, her street corner. Silence. And then one evening, Graham found himself beneath the old oak tree in the plaza where he first heard her play. He pulled out a worn sketch from his coat pocket, her drawing of him, not as a CEO, but as the man she saw beneath. He traced the lines with his thumb. A breeze moved through the leaves, and he whispered into the air, I'm sorry I let them speak louder than my heart. Then he stood, jaw set with quiet resolve. If you won't come back to me, he said to no one, I'll come to you. The streets were alive with sound and color as the city's spring festival bloomed into full swing. Booths lined the sidewalks with handmade crafts and sizzling food, while children with painted cheeks darted between clusters of laughter. Music echoed from every corner, jazz, folk, street drums, but one melody stopped Graham in his tracks. It was a violin. Faint at first, then rising like sunlight through mist. He didn't need to see her to know. He followed the sound through the crowd, heart pounding, unsure if she'd even look at him, unsure if she should. But when he reached the small makeshift stage nestled under a canopy of ivy and fairy lights, he saw her. Maya. She stood in a simple sky-blue dress, her hair swept to one side, her old bronze locket catching the afternoon light. No heels, no pretenses, just her, barefoot on a wooden platform, eyes closed as her bow swept across the strings. The song she played wasn't one he recognized, but the ache in it was familiar. A ballad about light after shadows, about finding truth in unexpected places. Her fingers danced like they remembered every note of heartbreak and every glimmer of hope that came after. People around him stood still, mesmerized. But Graham only saw her. As she reached the final note, her eyes fluttered open and met his. Her breath caught, so did his. He stepped forward as applause broke around them, weaving through the crowd until he stood at the edge of the platform. She watched, unmoving, her fingers trembling slightly on the neck of her violin. I told you once, he said clearly, for everyone to hear, that I needed someone to help me pretend, to fool a room into thinking I was in love. A few murmurs rippled through the audience, but the only person who got fooled was me. Maya didn't speak. She didn't move. But her eyes filled with tears. I thought I was hiring a partner for a single night, he continued. But you made me feel like a version of myself I'd forgotten. You made me laugh again. You made me believe in things I never let myself hope for. And then, I let someone convince me you weren't enough. A sharp breath left her lips, like the word stung. But the truth is, Maya, I was afraid I wasn't enough for you. Silence fell again, thick and charged. He stepped closer to the stage, his voice softer now. I don't want to pretend anymore. I don't care if you don't belong in my world because it turns out I don't want that world without you in it. All I want is what I feel when you sing, what I feel when I see you smile. He paused, chest rising. It's real. It's the only thing that's ever been real. Maya gently set the violin down on the stool beside her. Her hands were trembling as she stepped forward, off the stage, one foot, then the other. The crowd parted in reverent silence. She stopped just in front of him. She didn't speak. She just fell into his arms. The applause rose around them like a wave, but they didn't hear it. Graham held her tightly, his face buried in her hair, her arms wrapped around his back like she might never let go again. "I'm sorry it took me so long," he whispered. Maya leaned back just enough to look at him. Her voice cracked with truth. "I was just waiting for the truth." Later that evening, they returned to the rooftop where it all began. But this time, there were no scripts, no costumes, just strings of lights, a folding chair, and her guitar resting against the railing. Maya sat and began to sing. Not for strangers, not for show, but for the man who had finally found his way back to her. And Graham sat quietly, heart full, knowing he wasn't pretending anymore. He never would again. In the end, A Song Beneath the Glass reminds us that love isn't about perfection, status, or fitting into someone else's world. It's about showing up as you are and finding someone who chooses you anyway. Graham and Maya came from completely different lives. He had walls built from pressure and expectations. She had music stitched together with hope and survival. Yet it was in their honesty, not their performance, that they found each other. This story teaches us that vulnerability isn't weakness. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit that you're lost and let someone help you find your way back. And sometimes love doesn't arrive with fireworks or grand gestures. It arrives quietly, in laughter over spilled salt, in the sketch of an old couple under stars, in a voice that makes the world stop. Never let fear decide your future. Don't walk away from something real just because it scares you. Because real love doesn't require you to change who you are. It asks only that you stay. Stay honest, stay kind, stay open. So wherever you are watching from tonight, we'd love to know, what city or country are you joining us from? Drop a comment below. And if this story touched your heart, made you believe again in the power of truth and timing, please don't forget to subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories. We're here to remind you that even the smallest moments can lead to the most beautiful endings. Thank you for listening, and until next time, keep your heart open.